The Six Elements, and the Moment You Must Leave Them Behind, by Arunmayi Ma. In Buddhism, the six elements are presented as a complete map of human experience: earth, water, fire, air, space, and consciousness. They're powerful because they take something as nebulous as me and dissolve it into processes. Sensations instead of identity, conditions instead of essence. But a crucial part of the teaching is often missed. The elements are meant to be outgrown. They're a scaffold, not a shrine. When you first work with the elements, the body stops feeling like a monolith. Solidity becomes pressure. Fluidity becomes pulse. Heat becomes movement. Breath becomes expansion and contraction. Space reveals itself as the container of every experience. And consciousness, which is usually the last thing we question, becomes a process rather than a person. The elements loosen the grip of I by showing us that nothing in this body-mind stands alone. But if you cling to the model, if you keep labeling every sensation earth element, fire element, and so on, the practice starts to stagnate. You've replaced one identity with another, a different mask, but still a mask. So the teaching explicitly points beyond itself. Use the elements until the mind naturally stabilizes. Then set the model down. The five aggregates, form, feeling, perception, volitions, and consciousness, offer a different route to the same realization. Where the elements break down the physical and experiential components, the aggregates break down the psychological construction of self. The aggregates show us that experience is a chain of events. Form aligns with the physical aspects of elements. Feeling shows the tone, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. Perception recognizes patterns. Volitional formations propel reactions and intentions. And consciousness simply cognizes and changes moment by moment. Together, they dismantle the belief that I am one continuous experiencer. But the aggregates, like the elements, are also temporary frameworks. The Buddha is clear. Even the aggregates must be seen as empty of self and then released. They are tools for seeing, not truths to cling to. In a way, the elements dissolve the solidity of the body. The aggregates dissolve the solidity of the mind, and both ultimately fade into the same insight. Nothing can be held as me or mine. Mahayana takes this insight even further. In early Buddhism, the goal is recognizing that the self is empty. But Mahayana asks a more radical question. If the self is empty, what about the building blocks we use to analyze it? Are the elements truly real? Are the aggregates truly real? Mahayana's answer is ultimately no. They're empty too, empty of inherent essence, and empty of inherent existence. This is the emptiness of dharmas. The six elements are phenomenal events, dependently arising. The five aggregates are also phenomenal events, dependently arising. Even consciousness is a phenomenal event, dependently arising. The point isn't to deny experience. It's to stop mythologizing the categories. Mahayana insists on this because any system of analysis, no matter how refined, becomes a subtle form of reification. You start to think the elements are really there, or the aggregates are really there, in some ultimate metaphysical sense, but they're not. They're conceptual tools aimed at freeing the mind. And like every skillful means, they are meant to be dropped. This is why, for example, Zen emphasizes direct, unmediated presence. Not because the analytical frameworks are wrong, but because they've done their job already. When the elements are seen as empty, and the aggregates are seen as empty, what remains is awareness meeting experience with no story added, no analysis required. Simplicity without loss of depth. This is the moment where practice is no longer structured. It becomes natural. So the trajectory goes something like this. Learn the model, apply the model, recognize the model as constructed, then let the model go, and rest in direct knowing. What remains is astonishingly simple. a mind that responds without grasping, a body experience without identification, awareness that doesn't need to define what it knows. This is the point of where the elements, the aggregates, and even emptiness teachings dissolve into something plain and intimate. The ease of not having to hold anything at all. So, in the end, the 6 elements, the 5 aggregates, even the teachings on emptiness, they're all pointing you back to something so simple it's almost easy to overlook. They're invitations to see that nothing that you experience has ever been yours in the way that you imagined. The body dissolves into sensations. The mind dissolves into movements. Even the frameworks that helped you see this dissolve once their work is done. And what's left isn't some cosmic secret. It's the ordinary freedom of not having to cling to any of it. This is the quiet gift of the practice. Not that it gives you something new, but that it takes away the things you never needed to carry. And once all that's released, you can finally meet your life directly. Not from the perspective of an identity defending itself, but from a clarity that doesn't need to call itself anything. That's where the path really begins. Right at the moment everything else drops away. Thank you for listening.